Siegfried hasted thence in his Tarnkappe to the haven on the shore, where he found a ship, the which he boarded secretly, and rowed it swiftly, as it had been blown by the wind. None saw the boatman. He made it fly with his great strength. Any that marked it deemed it driven by a tempest, but it was by Siegfried, fair Sieglind's child. A day and a night brought him to a great country that 100 days' journey could not compass. This hight the Nibelung land, where he had his vast treasure. The hero landed alone on a broad meadow, and moored the ship. Then he went to a mountain whereon a castle stood, and asked for lodging, as he had been a way-weary man. He went up to the door that stood locked before him, for folk guarded their honour then, even as now. The stranger began to knock at the bolted door, and encountered within a huge giant that kept watch, and that had his weapon ever by him. And this giant said, "Who knocketh so loud on that door?" Siegfried answered with a feigned voice, "I am a knight. Open to me, else I will rouse some within that had willingly lain soft abed." The porter was wroth at Siegfried's word. He did on his armour, and put his helmet on his head, and grasped his shield, and swung open the door. Then he ran grimly at Siegfried, saying, "How durst thou waken so many brave men?" And he smote him hard and swift. The noble stranger made wary fence, but the porter lifted an iron bar, and brake his shield-band. Then the hero came in scathe, and began to fear grim death, when the porter smote so hard. Yet his master loved him the more for his daring. They strove so fiercely that the castle rang, and the din thereof was heard in the whole of the Nibelungs. But Siegfried overcame the porter at the last, and bound him. And the news spread through the Nibelung land. Albrecht, a bold and savage dwarf, heard their strife from far off through the mountain. He did on his armour straightway, and ran where he found the stranger that had made an end of binding the giant. Now Albrecht was bold and stout, and on his body he had a helmet and coat of mail, and in his hand a heavy scourge of gold. He hasted and fell on Siegfried. The scourge had 7 heavy knobs hanging from it, wherewith he smote so heavily to the left upon the shield that he well nigh brake it. Then the noble guest came in peril. He threw away the broken shield, and stuck his long sword into the sheath, for he would not slay his chamberlain, but ever spared his own folk, wherein he did honourably. With strong hands he ran at Albrecht, and grasped the 8 hoary man by the beard, and shook him sore, that he yelled aloud. Certes, the young hero's handling was dolorous enow to Albrecht, who cried out, "Spare me! Had I not sworn fealty to a knight already, I would serve thee till I died." This he spake craftily. Siegfried bound Albrecht as he had done to the giant, and the dwarf was in evil case through Siegfried's strength, and asked, "What is thy name?" Siegfried answered, "Siegfried is my name. Methought thou hadst known me." "Right glad am I to hear it," said Albrecht the dwarf. "For now I know by thy prowess that thou art worthy to be the lord of this land, and will do all thy behest if thou spare my life." Said Siegfried then, "Haste, and bring me 1,000 Nibelung knights of the best we have. I would see them here before me. Thou hast not to fear by my hand." He loosed the giant and Albrecht ran to the knights, and waked them eagerly, and said, "Rouse ye, O heroes, and go to Siegfried." They sprang from their beds, and were ready on the instant, 1,000 good knights and rich attired. They went where Siegfried stood, and he greeted them fair. They lit many tapers, and poured for him the spiced draught, and he thanked them that they had not lingered, and said, "Ye shall follow me hence across the sea." Whereto he found the good knights willing. Full 30,000 warriors were come at his bidding, and from these he chose 1,000 of the best. And some brought them their helmets, and some their coats of mail, for they had to follow Siegfried into Brunhild's land. He said then, "Hearken, good knights, ye go to court, and must have rich apparel, for ye shall be seen of fair women. Wherefore array you in your best." Now a fool might say, Thou liest! How could so many knights dwell together? Where find the meat, and where the vesture? It were not possible if Siegfried had 30 lands. But ye have heard that Siegfried was rich, for the kingdom and the hoard of the Nibelungs were his. Wherefore his knights had enow and to spare, for the hoard grew never less for all that he took from it. They rose up early in the morning, doughty followers had Siegfried won, and took good horses with them and sumptuous apparel, and departed proudly for Brunhild's land. Many beautiful maidens gazed from the windows there, and the queen said, "Do any of you know who they be that I behold yonder afar off on the waves? Their sails are rich and whiter than snow." The king of Rhineland answered, "They are my men, that I left some little way behind when I journeyed hither. I summoned them, and now, queen, they are here." They welcomed the noble guest courteously. Siegfried stood in the prow of the vessel, richly clad, and many warriors beside him. The queen said, "Tell me, O king, shall I greet the guest or no?" He answered, "Go out now before the castle, so shall they see they are welcome." And the queen did as he counselled her, and greeted Siegfried before any, and they lodged them, and took their arms in charge. Now so many guests were in the land that they were pressed for room, and the Burgundians were eager to be home. Then said the queen, "I would thank him that would distribute for me among mine and the king's guest the gold and silver that I have in plenty." Dankvart, bold Gisela's man, answered, "Noble queen, give me the key, and I will so divide it that if there be any shame, it shall be mine only." None could deny that he gave freely. When Hagen's brother held the key, he bestowed costly gifts without stint. Whoso desired a mark received so much that the poorest was rich his life long. Pounds by the hundreds he gave uncounted, and many an one went forth from the hall richly dight, that never afore had worn so fair vesture. They told it to the queen, who was wroth, and said, "I would know, king, wherefore thy chamberlain leaveth me naught of my apparel, and spendeth all my gold. I would thank him that stayed his hand. He giveth as he thought I had summoned death hither. But I trust to live yet a while, and can spend for myself, I trow, what my father left me." Never had queen so lavish a chamberlain. But Hagen of Trony made answer, "Know, lady, that the king of the Rhine hath gold and raiment to give in plenty, nor needeth to bear aught of Brunhild hence." "Nay, if thou lovest me," said the queen, "let me fill 20 travelling chests with gold and with silk, that my hand may have somewhat to bestow when we get home to the land of Burgundy." They filled the chest with precious stones. Her own chamberlain saw to it, for she would not trust Gisela's man. And Gunther and Hagen began to laugh. Then the queen said, "To whom shall I leave my kingdom? Thy hand and mine must establish that, or we depart." The king answered, "Call for him who thou wilt, and he shall be regent." The lady saw her nearest of kin standing nigh her, her mother's brother, and to him she said, "Take my castles and my land in charge, till that King Gunther's own hand holdeth rule here." She chose from among her knights 2,000 men to follow her to the Rhine, and the 1,000 Nibelung warriors. Then she made ready for the journey, and rode down to the shore. She took with her 86 women, and 100 fair damsels, and they tarried not longer, but set out. They that were left behind wept sore. Graciously and sweetly the lady quitted her land. She kissed her nearest of kin that stood round. With loving farewells they reached the sea, to the land of her fathers. The maiden returned nevermore. Many hands made music during the voyage, and they had all manner of pastime, and a favouring wind. And so they sailed away, and many a mother's son wept for it. Brunhild wedded not the king on the voyage, but waited for a hightide that was to be held in the castle of Worms, and thither they speeded merrily with their knights.